teach them in the classroom using the WIDA standards in each subject area. And this is for EFD645, and I'm Erin Piper, and my group members are Charlie Frierson and Chris Holder.
The first exercise we will be doing, we will do an icebreaker activity. As you may know, Humpty Dumpty is a popular song for us growing up. We will sing the riddle of or nursery rhyme of Humpty Dumpty in three different languages, from Spanish, French, and Italian. This should allow the educators to get familiar with learning in the various language and try to break the ice as you start the PL.
All right, here are some important terms kind of for ELL and second language acquisition. And I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but a couple of them that I wanted to point out when you're dealing with an ELL situation, and that's colloquialisms. I know here in the southeastern United States, we love our colloquialisms. And as somebody who is not a native Southerner, it can be quite daunting to try and figure out what does fixin' to actually mean? I mean, I'm a native English speaker, so just imagine what it would be like for someone that doesn't even speak the language. And so just kind of colloquialisms are something that you really need to try and not use when dealing with ELL situations. But if you look at some of these other ones, the last term is the one I really want to focus on. Transitional programs. Programs that emphasize bilingual education as a means from moving from the culture and language most used for communication in the home to the mainstream of the U.S. languages and cultures. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with these WIDA standards. You know, at home they might speak one language, but this will kind of help them get into transition into more of the language that we use in our culture and languages and everyday activities when dealing with kind of not only school, but the general public at large as well.
Okay, so what is WIDA, and what does it stand for, and what does it do? So WIDA stands for the World Class Instructional Design and Assessment. And this is, it's a group of states that have provided some language development resources for teachers of multilingual learners. So they provide language standards, assessments, professional learning, and just lots of resources for teachers. And so one of the resources are some standards that we're going to go over in each subject area. And this allows teachers to kind of have a guide of what their ELL students should be able to do in the classroom. Along with this, we have the Access test. And that's a computer-based adaptive test that assesses our ELL's progress towards English language proficiency. So this is part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, this test is, and this tests students specifically in 4 areas. The 4 areas are listening, reading, speaking, and writing. And so again, this test is something that's done typically towards the end of the year, but not always, but it's really just meant to serve as a progress monitoring assessment for our ELL students. And then at the bottom of this slide, you can see the link to learn more about that test.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the different levels of the WIDA standards. We're going to talk about level 1, which is entering, level 2, emerging, level 3, developing, level 4, expanding, and level 5, bridging. This is the cognitive function, and this is for the students at all levels to see their proficiency, their English proficiency level. As you can see that there are various levels to how you will introduce different subjects to different students. So you have to go by a tiered approach from level 1 to level 5. And as you can see, level 1, you're entering into the subject, and then various times during the level, you can go to level 3, which is developing, and it can get a little bit more advanced. And level 5 is basically an advanced level where they're speaking the language fluently.
All right, so one of the terms that WIDA uses is can-do descriptors. And that's what a student at each level should be able to do, what they can do, so to speak. And if you notice, they break it down in here, and then as they get higher up on the level, it gets a little bit more complex. So you start down here at the bottom, it's just very basic. Pictures or graphs representation of the language of the content area. Words, phrases, chunks of language when presented with one-step commands, directions. All right, who, what, when, where, why questions, or statements with visual and graphic support. It's just very basic, and that's where we're starting at. That's somebody that just pretty much enters into your classroom without any prior formal training. They're going to be here at entering. But then as they go, they might start off the year at entering, but by the time they leave your room or the grade level, we'd like them, moving up and going. And we'll find that kids at this level move really fast. And, they're going to pick it up just right away. And within each grade level, there are even more detailed kind of can-do descriptors that we'll take a look at in just a second here that really break it down on what's the difference between a 1 and a 2 or a 2 and a 4. And so we can go ahead and take a look at those next.
Okay, so for English language arts, again, these standards that we're going to show you guys are for middle school grades 6 through 8. So for English, it's broken down into 2 sections. We have reading and writing. So for example, with level 1, with reading, again, like Chris just said, we're looking at a lot of visual representations. We're looking at reading everyday signs or symbols that the students might use. So for a student that has very little English proficiency, that would be at the level 1, the entering level. We might want to start off with just making sure they can read everyday signs in the classroom, maybe symbols around the school, schedules, and that they can understand what those mean. Again, respond to some WH questions. So hopefully getting them to understand or to at least pick up the who part of a question or the where part of a question. So small things like that. And then as we go through the levels, ideally at the end of the year, we would have them at level 5 for this particular grade level. And so that would be much more complex, like Chris was saying. So interpreting grade level literature, which even students who are not learning another language might have difficulty with. So that is much more complex. For example, in writing, we're looking at labeling content-related diagrams, so very visual, lots of graphs, short answers, things like that for an entering student. And then as they go up, maybe, for example, at level 3 for writing, they are able to write short narratives, maybe some expository pieces. And then again, as they move up to level 4 and level 5, the end result would be being able to produce some type of research report. So that's going to be exposing them to a lot of print and a lot of the English language that, they weren't able to do when they were maybe at level 1 or even level 2.
Okay, the